So start to feel more rather than less. But I want to talk about the sensation of inwardness, right? And so often when you hear that, like inward, going inward, we think of it as a mental activity, right? Or psychological, or, you know, a lot of the people you've met in your life tend, likely, maybe less so since the pandemic, but tend to be not exactly reflective, right? Or, you know, and a lot of people are sometimes leery or afraid to be too reflective or too aware of themselves because it's hard, right? But that's not what I mean by the sensation of inwardness. So if inwardness wasn't a psychological endeavor or a mental endeavor, instead it was a reversing of the direction. So like, instead of like going, okay, here's my mind out here, and then there's inward. One of the reasons why you practice is that over and over again is so you get better and better at keeping your mind quiet. So this experiences that you're actually having, which are both tangible, like pain is one more tangible one, but there's stuff even below that or different than that. So as you sit here for a second and, you know, soften the inside of your mouth and allow your exhalation, you know, be more aware of your exhalation. And like just the grounding of not trying to hold up the world, right? With your mind, hold up your day with your mind, right? So for sure, a precondition of the sensation of inwardness is that your mind actually has to quiet down, but don't just think about that as stopping something. Maybe it's freeing something, that it's freeing for the mind not to have to be in the lead. So like right now, I'm leaning forward onto my table with my forearms because I'm just trying to land. And I'm feeling the bones in my forearm. I'm like trying to let my bones ground while, you know, letting my exhale be more of a leader than my inhale. I don't know about you, like if you have your forearms on a table or on your lap, I get this sensation of them being slightly heavier and more directly grounded directionally on exhalation. And so you want to keep that grounded sensation while the inhale begins. Freedom by letting go. Inhalation against that backdrop. So when you soften the organs of perception around the temples, the jaw, the inside of the mouth, you're actually kind of clearing the deck for more experience. So in this strange sense, it's not a lessening when you clear your mind. It's an opening. It's like a changing of orientation. It's not a new idea that your inward sensation is much more robust than your mind will ever know. So that's part of why, like, and how someone like Freud or Jung or whoever developed notions of the unconscious, because like they're trying to say there's more going on and they're just limiting the psychologically. There's more water going underneath then your mind expresses psychologically, well, that's not a shock, especially if your mind's not in charge. It was never actually in charge. That's not a depressing thought, that's a freeing thought. It becomes more freeing as you increase the sensation of grounding through your body. So feel your feet and your sitting bones. So the lift in the chest and the presence of the base that you're leaning on the table or on your thighs or whatever is actually becoming part of the inhalation, staying steady through the exhalation. The organs of perception are staying soft and ungripped because you're not afraid. You don't have to hold on because your body's already doing that work. Your mind doesn't have to do it. Later today, it will. But the fact that you have unknowable dimension is not only part of the human condition, it's a pillar in human resilience. So you're allowing that with softened jaw and temples, softened eyes, with your exhale. And the inhalation rises again within the dropping. And the grounding part becomes part of the rising part. All this is happening before we start asana. So the quieting part opens your mind up to more of your nervous system. I think probably when you're quiet, you're probably most connected. Something that's been missed in human development, or at least human mind development. When I'm the most quiet, I can kind of feel how gratitude is an option. Good, and then sit up a little bit straighter. So there's a tendency in the Western approach to grappling with the sensation, the expanding sensation of self-realization, is to make it feel kind of ominous, like the id or the ego, superego, like it's some sort of, and there's base desires and there's something wrong in there, in the darkness, right? So if you read the newsletter this weekend, it was on the unknown and the sensation of certainty, right? And the road to certainty is not by making the unknown known. It's part of what I was trying to get across in the greeting. Certainty is a sensation that comes from somewhere else. There's always ways to doubt. And yet the energy that doubt trades on is the same energy that wonder trades on, and curiosity. So you're sitting and feeling that the unknowable texture, depth of you isn't threatening. It's just there. So start to feel your feet on the floor, your sitting bones. And so now you're building a stool. Remember, prana rewards structure. So you're kind of making the legs on the stool, right? So you're feeling your feet and your sitting bones, and you're trying to use the grounding. So you press slightly down through your heels, right? Feel your sitting bones, lift the lower abdomen up. So you're increasing the structure without dissipating the emptiness, right? You're trying to become congruent with the part of you that is unknowable, but which the nervous system can sense. It just can't make it tangible. So the depth of you has to be included on an experiential level, not just with your thoughts. And this is part of why asana is one of the limbs. So you're extending from the inner groin to the inner knee and hitting down through your inner heel. You're feeling your sitting bones, you're lifting up, you're raising your chest. You're expanding between the backside of your shoulder blades, right? You're going in multiple directions in the center of your chest, but from the backside, re-soften the inside of your mouth and your jaw. Balance your head over your neck. Start coming into phase. Open your eyes if you haven't, right? So you're coming in, and here comes, you're right on the precipice of more effort, but you're staying quietly grounded with the other part. And just notice your breath. Alert stillness in your kidneys, meaning like each side of your mid-lobe, your mid-back, on each side of your spine. Now stretch your arms straight down if you can. If that doesn't feel like you go to off balance, keep them on the table or on your lap. It's fine, but now we're adding more effort. Right, so I'm stretching my fingertips down. Right, because I'm trying to activate down as I lift in the opposite direction of my chest, as I roll my femur bones in and go down to my inner heel, while my spine is rising. I'm working to stay grounded. And a few more breaths. So remember those weird instructions, like open your elbow pit like a blinking eye. To do this, broaden gently across your palm, keep your elbow pit comfortable. Catch it by bringing your shoulder blades slightly down and together, so this opens right here. Because this part here needs to find opening. Good, and then release. So take your thumb and like hook it against suspenders. You're like Farmer Joe, right? And push in and up. So I'm doing it one side at a time, because when I go two sides, I go off balance. But I will do two sides as part of the practice. One side needs lift, way more lift than the other. That's my scoliosis there. Then I'm going back to the other, right? And it's funny, this side lifts, this shoulder is the tightest for me. So I'm trying to like do my yoga, I'm dropping my elbow down as I push this space up. I'm going to do the other side. Trying to get that rise. Now I'll do both at once. Good. Now I'm going to come forward and create more grounding in my legs. So like I'm preparing the vessel, right? I know a lifted chest is in every pose. I know grounding's in every pose. So now I'm leaning forward to find my base. The problem for me is when and then I'm coming back to this again, is that I kind of lose the separation between my legs and my low back. So this is why so often in release. So this is why so often in the class I'm wanting to lift up and let your low back lengthen. Right? Because I want that spaciousness to be part of what holds up the lift in my chest or supports the lift in my chest. And I'm gonna put my hands on my legs because I want to separate this lower abdomen from my legs. So I'm pushing out on my legs, lifting up with my lower abdomen so I find the sensation of space at the crease of the hips, right? And I'm gonna lift again. Because I'm telling you, this space is really, really important, right? So I'm going back and forth, trying to get this space to be distinct where the top of my legs are separated from my very low abdomen, right? So I'm going back and forth with this. Right? And going like, oh yeah, I want this open. And now I can tell that if I were to put my hand, if I can, into my sacrum, right, that would be part of opening this space too. So I'm taking both hands behind me or one or none, but just locate where your sacrum is. And I'm pushing it forward. So I'm using the back of my hands and pushing it forward. And then I'm immediately trying to catch it with the space right here, right? So it's like, there's the space in, the shoulders go back. And I'm integrating the pressure on my sacrum or each side of my tailbone. And then I'm letting it drop. And then I'm doing it again, rolling the shoulders back. And then I'm letting it drop, come forward again. So this is like in between, because one of the things I recognize is when I was just doing that and I was pushing my sacrum forward and trying to lift the suspenders here, right? I wasn't rolling my inner head of my femur bone in and down and taking advantage of Tadasana, right? So I'm going to, this next time, I'm going to do the same thing. But now my attention is going to be doing all the actions and having a sense of energy rolling in and down as my sacrum comes forward and my chest opens, right? So again, I'm putting up, you can even sit on your hands. In fact, that's how I'm gonna do it this time. I'm sitting on the top of my hands, right? I'm stuffing them partway under my rump here, right? I'm gonna push in. And as I push in, I'm gonna broaden, roll my shoulders back. And now I can tell you, it's very hard for me to roll my inner femur bones in and down, right? So I'm just gonna sit there and be patient right there. The thing about finding inward sensation and release is that it takes patience. It's not trying harder, it's patience, right? And so I'm doing it again. And in fact, my brain kind of goes, oh, I'm waiting, but I don't know what for, right? Because I can't feel my legs like most of you can. So now I'm gonna take my hands and roll my own femur bones in, right? So I'm gonna like make some grounding sensation here for my brain. So my brain, so I'm grabbing on my thighs and I'm rolling my thighs in because I know this energy keeps my connection to the earth, right? So this rolling in keeps the downward energy online. That's Tadasana, right? While at the same time, my chest lives up and back, up and open in opposition. So there's a relationship between the top and the bottom, right? And I'm trying to literally, like Play-Doh, imprint my brain with sensations of my legs and refinement in my legs, not just physical action. Some of you can press down through your heels, but I want you to roll your thighs in, find what that feels like, and then extend from the inner groin to the inner knee, down to the inner heel, and make it physical. But don't let if you have the ability to physically do it, don't let it cover up what's happening more subtly when the femur bones roll in. So keep going back and forth between, there's the sack of potatoes hitting the ground. Here's refinement, delivering energy to the ground. Here's the opening in opposition, right? Because yoga poses go in multiple directions simultaneously and then release. So now I'm going to go back and sitting on my hands, right? Right, and I'm going to push in on my sitting bones or sacrum, open my chest, and now feel how to roll the thighs in and press down through the heels, and do it. Feel and do it as the chest is open. Good, and then release. I'm taking time with this for a variety of reasons, right? But one of them is that there's a really important pose called Setu Bandha in yoga that Bhikkhu Sanghar, he doesn't say this about any other pose. He says that Setu Bandha is God's gift to humankind. I don't know what he means, except I've been wondering about why he would say that about that one pose, right? And I remember so some of us that have tighter hip flexors, which I do, right? And some of you that are walking don't have as tight hip flexors, right? Which is really good, but do you know how good it is that you don't have tight hip flexors, right? That's the thing about it. The people that have tighter hip flexors know how important it is because they don't have it, right? So I was way back early in my yoga practice, and a senior Iyengar teacher came up to me and said, so the way I would do Setu Bandha would be to lay on a mat, lay on my back, put a bolster underneath my sacrum, strap my legs together, and Setu Bandha is like bridge pose, like it's upward facing bridge, right? So you're on this bolster and your head's over here and your feet are over here and your tailbone's getting lifted up by the bolster. So the junction point between your upper body and lower body is receiving input, right? And if you don't get straight more often, the hip flexors get tight. That's the physical side of it. But I remember when this teacher looked at me and said, and I didn't do it, I didn't understand the depth of what he was saying. He said, do this every day. Keep this junction between your upper and lower body moving skyward, okay? Because it'll keep you more open. So what you're experiencing today is how you can get the energy of Setu Bandha, right, in a seated position. Setu Bandha has shoulder stand in it. It has headstand in it. It's got this reference on the tailbone while your chest is opening, because you're laying back over a bolster. It's got all the fundamentals in the pose of the inversions, right? All right, so now we're gonna do it again. So I've been trying to have you separate your sensation in your legs from your sensation in your torso, because that's the space that needs to feel lighter, right? So again, right, we're gonna go back and pull on the legs. Right. So all this time I've been asking you to lift up and put your back in traction and lengthen. It's because I want there to be space at the junction. Turns out the junction between your spine and your legs is really important in almost every single yoga pose, right? Which is part of why Setu Bandha is such an important pose, right? So we're going back and forth going, And so now I'm going to add, so this is the Iyengar genius, right? He starts adding reference. So I'm sitting on my hands now. I'm adding outward sensation to help my inward dimension, my awareness of what's inward. And I'm pushing on my sitting bones. I'm kind of leaping my knees out towards forward in the room as I'm like getting that lift. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to open my chest. And I'm making, and then I'm releasing, come forward. Then I'm going to do it again. Getting this open here, right? Good, and then release. So now, as this gets more open, you've heard me, I don't focus on Setu Bandha as much, but I've also had you like, as you scoot forward, take one knee forward, one knee back, and then go the other way. Another knee, right? So we're trying to just get more movement, right, in the spaces at the juncture. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go forward, right? I'm going to let one knee, I'm adding rhythm now to the movement of my pelvis. So instead of just pushing my tailbone forward when I'm leaning back, now I'm trying to get the sense of rhythm and sensuality in this juncture, and then go up. Forward, you cover it up, but you ground towards the earth. I'm going to go back to putting my hands underneath me again, pressing on my sacrum. I'm going to take time now. I'm going to hop a little bit because I like this buoyancy I'm creating, right? So here I'm just like pushing down and lifting up because there's some, you can do it on your wheels too. But I'm feeling some buoyancy here because damn it, there's space here. There's dimension that I don't activate and I would never know exist unless I introduce movement. I would never know it existed if I didn't introduce movement. And then I'm going to open, I'm going to push. Good, and then release. Sit in center. Now this opening forward and lifting the chest, I want to ground through my legs. So I'm going to roll in my femur bone again. Because I want to be, so one of the really cool things about Setu Bandha, okay, so I have this little piece of foam. Imagine that's a bolster, and my head's here. This is underneath my tailbone. My feet are here, right? There's pressure coming into my sacrum this way. You're opening the joint, the crease between your torso and your legs skyward, right? You have your lower body, your feet are on the ground, your head and upper shoulders are on the ground. So then Prasanna Iyengar says about this pose, right, that it connects the shores of the self. So calling it a bridge still puts it in a straight line, right? So your chest is open and expanding in every direction. Your sacrum is getting reference up and hopefully open in every per direction. Your head and your feet and or ankles are grounding the two sides of the bridge. And you're connecting the shores of the self. Now, one of the things that I like thinking about it as a bridge is that every bridge has the potential for two-way traffic, right? So you can walk over the bridge this way, walk over the bridge this way. So in Setu Bandha, you're creating a bridge between the shores of the self, whatever all this means, right? Remember, we're just trying to uncover your dimension, right? Right, and you got the head and the feet, and you're trying to find energy going in both directions, down towards the earth, up towards the sky, right? So let's, with that image in mind, right? So when I'm having you roll your femur bones in, remember, I'm trying to adapt sensations. Most of you aren't going to get a bolster and you're not going to be able to do it regularly, roll it in. So here, I'm making sure as I roll my femur bones in and show Tadasana, I'm making sure that the energy continues through my feet to one of the shores over the river, right? I'm a bridge. And so I'm doing stuff here. As I open here and start to go back, I'm thinking about my head touching the other shore, right? It doesn't mean you have to tip your head back farther. For God's sakes, it was never about how far you got. It was about getting the spine to go this way from the back of your head. Start to try to intuit your feet, right? So you've got the two sides. of the bridge and marking that connection with your breath. Good. And then slowly uncoil. So right now, and I'm leaning back through this so I can keep momentum of the foot traffic going over the bridge, right? So I'm actually using a whole bunch of sensations here, right? And I'm about to go back into it again. Here we go. And I want my feet to be on one riverbank, my head touching the other riverbank. And when you do this, isn't it hard to see where the midpoint of the bridge is? Right? This is why Setu Bandha, for people that aren't sitting all the time, is done while laying flat, right? And then come on back. So now if I know there's this side of the riverbank, there's this side of the riverbank, and the place that needs to stay the most lit is the midpoint of the bridge, which is going to be right about my tailbone, right? So now we go back to the sensation of finding how to enliven, right, the midpoint of the bridge, right? So I'm like, whoa, okay. So as I push in, feel my feet and take my head back, I want two-way traffic and then come back. The tendency, because we're so in love with our heads, we tend to see all the drama at this shore, the head shore, right? No, right? The head means nothing without the feet on the bridge. You can't have a one-sided bridge, right? So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to open. I'm going to make sure I keep my feet grounded. Push in on the midpoint of the bridge. Open my chest. Good, and then release. Now, for those of you that have it available to you, some of your homework for today would be to go in your bed or go wherever you can lie down and literally put something under your sacrum. Don't do it too long, because if you're not used to it, your low back will get kind of crabby kind of fast, right? But you're getting the input while you're lying horizontal. The difficulty about doing Setu Bandha like this, when you're upright like this, is that the juncture is harder to feel open at, right? Remember, in inversions, so I'm telling you Setu Bandha is a two-way bridge. In inversions, the energy is trying to figure out how to go down towards the feet or up towards the feet. But it can only do it, if you know anything about inversions, if the one side of the bridge, like if you're doing headstand, right? If this is really grounded, if you secure the one side of the bridge, then you can see the energy going towards the feet, right? So one more time or 10 more times, right? Because realizing inward dimension, when you try to do it just mentally, you end up on the same path over and over and over again. When you introduce the body into realizing sensation and introduce movement, you end up with variation for the mind to realize better what the inward sensation is, right? So asana's got this, is trying to be patient to retrain the mind, right? It's trying to freaking get the mind to shut up, right? So I'm going, and I'm going to take some time to practice the upper body part. Just quick here without all this worry about the other shore. And then I'm going to like, let it collapse. Now I'm going to find my feet. I'm going to roll my thighs in. Some of you can do it physically. I can't do it physically, but I am seeing it. I'm going from the backs of my eyes, feeling my sitting bones, feeling where my inner heels are, and I'm rolling in at the base of my spine. Now I'm going to push up. I'm going to open and go the other direction while lengthening out through my knees, grounding my sitting bones, opening my chest, feeling the bottoms of my feet, tipping my head back, and be of service. Let there be two-way traffic over your bridge. Good, and then release. Ooh. Don't you wonder what a bridge, if the bridge had eyeballs, don't you wonder what it looked like to see all the feet traveling over it back and forth? And so you, like, what does a bridge look, if the bridge were looking at us, like, right, like we're the goofy ones walking over it, right? So part of the goal of asana is to be able to see, like the bridge, everything that's happening. So like Bhikkhu Sangha will say, like, hey, every cell's got eyes. Every cell has eyes that look both this way and inward, right? Every single cell has got this dual inward and outward vision. Our light practices the outward, right? Our practice needs to practice the eyeballs that look in. So we're gonna do the Setu Bandha one more time. When I say watch the foot traffic in both directions, right? Find the place from which you could watch the constant back and forth. I kind of figure that trees must see us like bridges would. like they're already there, right? They're already grounded, right? Okay, so I'm getting into, do whatever you've done so far to get to this point in the class. Find the two shores of the riverbanks. I'm using motion here because I want there to be rhythm. And I don't want to be frozen as I observe the two-way foot traffic. Okay, now I'm going to do it. I'm going to go into the, and I'm going to be underneath it, the foot traffic. And then release and uncoil. So, weird, strange question that only you don't have to answer it out loud. Which way was it easier for you to see the foot traffic? So it looks like Pat felt it going over her face, right? I felt the foot traffic going down to my feet, right? I don't know. I don't even know what we're talking about right now, except I do. And so do you, because you were just doing it. And so I was like, holy crimes, what the hell, right? I think I have trouble with the idea of someone walking over my face. I think there's probably a psychological, I don't want people walking over my face, for God's sakes. So now I'm going to sit more upright without all the drama of the whole pose. And I'm going to do the whole pose. I'm going to see, feel, and experience the pose on the inside without the doing on the outside. I'm going to take my head back a little bit. I need a little bit of it. Feel your breath as you do this. Good, and then release. Come forward. Lengthen again your low back. Feel that space. Stay humble to it. Drop your chin, lift your sternum. See the bridge. The bridge doesn't have to be in the shape of a bridge. Good, and then release. Left hand up. Over. Over. What, you mean there's two-way traffic in a twist? Yep. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. You mean that I need to go down towards the earth and skyward as I twist? You're a two-way bridge? Yep. Good, and then release. And then come on back to center. All right. Over. Multiple directions. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. Good, and then come on back to center. Be in the center. It's funny about there always being a two-way bridge. Come forward now more. Actually, let's just come forward evenly first before we twist. Every bridge would need its footings, right? So I'm forward to find the grounding. So I'm leaning forward down through my heels. Then I'm going to hit my sitting bones down, and then I'm going to lift. So I'm leaning forward in a forward bend, but I'm activating skyward with the center of my chest. And then release. So one of the really, okay, I'm going to back up for a second. So one of the really cool things I think about yoga, so one of the lines I keep thinking about as I'm sharing this with you is the bridge, image is, it's hard for us to see a bridge not horizontally. It's a horizontal thing, right? It's across something, okay? Which is exactly what this whole sequence has been about. Simultaneously, when I tried to apply it to the twist, right? I was saying, you mean there's a two-way traffic here too, right? And that then the bridge could also be this way, could be vertical. And then I smile when I hear a line written in an ancient text that my yoga teacher passed to me, is that the line, you are the weaving between the earth and the sky. So this connection between where you are here and the spaciousness of open space, right? You're a bridge between the two. I want you to see it this time as a bridge, right? Where you're linking two shores. So instead of doing it like this whole thing about horizontal, which is really hard to do in a chair, now we're going to go back to this idea of horizontal and vertical. So as I ask you to come forward and lean here, so cobra pose, an upward facing dog, and different poses in a more traditional practice are going to be where you're lying flat on the earth and you're rising up with your chest, right? So here, let's not forget Setubandha. So I'm leaning forward, and when I ask you to ground your sitting bones, right? That's kind of the reference at the sacrum of Setubandha. I ask you to stay aware of your inner heels. That's the footing on one side of the riverbank, right? The rolling into the femur bones of Tadasana is to make sure the bridge keeps its integrity, right? Now I'm going to start to lift my chest and start to go skyward, right? And open. Of course, my shoulder blades go down my body. Of course, they spread. Of course, the hood of my chest opens. But that drama needs to be mediated by the inward dimension at my sacrum and the connection to the earth, right? Down to the feet. So I'm doing two-way traffic in my spine in this position. Good, and then release. Now contrast that with the two-way traffic of this. So I hope you're still feeling the reference on your sacrum, right? And then come through again. So now I'm teaching these movements where I've taught a lot, but from a different perspective, because I'm trying to uncover a resource that already existed in your experience, right? So you're coming down, you're finding the earth and you're popping up, right? But you're trying to now bring the sky down to the center of your chest. Don't just reach up for the sky, bring it down. Connect it to the earth through the sitting bones and the feet. Good, and then release. Go back. Now your relationship to the earth is different here. That's why I talked about all these shores of the banks of the river, right? As your chest opens directly skyward, it's the banks that need to stay sturdy. Good, and then come back to center. Be in the center. Sit on the front edge of your sitting bones, lift your chest. So you're not forward, you're not back. You're somewhere slightly more forward than you are behind your balance point, but you're just taking inventory. Breathing into your inventory of where your body's been. From this place, inhale and take your arm up again. Move. Open. Find. Up and down, earth and sky. Bridge with two-way traffic. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, revolve. Stay patient. Come on back to center. Overworking is a sign of an impatient yoga student. Find it all. Good, and then come on back to center. One of the things that I just saw in my own twist, especially this way, but this way too, is that when I take my head, if I, get overexcited and turn my head too quick, I lose one side of the riverbank. So I'm wanting to keep my chin in line with the sternum. So I make sure the back of my head stays on one of the riverbanks. And only if I can make sure that's true, should I turn my head. It's really hard. I think I'm better for a while if I'm doing Setu Bandha while I'm twisting. I'm keeping my chin in line with my sternum. I'm gonna go the other way now. This is the side I sat more on. Now, once I go here, I lose the earth too much. So I'm gonna keep my chin in line with my sternum. Stay patient. feel this first. And then if I want to take my head farther out, then I just feel it as window dressing. Don't even need to. I'm honest. Good, and then come on back to center. Come forward and reclaim that space in your back. So now we're heading towards Shavasana. Now we're going to back up. I like to back out of a room sometimes. I'm going to touch my suspenders. Right? Been a lot of places, inward and outward in this class, trying to find two-way traffic on the bridge. Right? And then I'm going to visit. I'm not going to do nearly as hard. I'm just going to visit. And remembering all the places I've worked in, right? And then I'm going to come into alignment, practice symmetry. Because Shavasana is supposed to bring relief to where you've been. So I just visited where the class was. As soon as I do, it makes me want to balance my head over my neck and not lose this shore of the riverbank. To keep this and then keep where my feet are, I need to feel where my sitting bones are and maybe slightly deepen my groin. Feeling my feet, my knees, my hips, my shoulders, and each side of my head, where each elbow is. Because I want my Shavasana to be symmetrical. Oof. I can feel where I've overworked. I want to try to soften where I've overworked before I do Shavasana. So I'm on deep listening previous for Shavasana. Because I want relief to touch everywhere. Relief after action. Good. And then release. Find your position for Shavasana. So I just lean a little bit more back in my chair. You know, I've got my way that I do it. I need to support the back of my wrists. Maybe touch my fingertips. Remember, there's a heaviness and a lightness here, a sensitivity, and a drop. So softening the temples and the skin in the forehead, the jaw on the inside of the mouth is part of the drop that helps the sensitivity. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. So the river that you are bridging actually feeds you. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Thank your body. Think it again. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes slowly and let the light in. If you need to, close them again. And then open. So I was struck by realizing I was thinking about my niece actually, yes, this morning, but she's going through that period of, mid-20s where the world is, looks kind of stupid, especially your family of origin, right? And, my son's entering this phase at 22 where he's fighting his own territory, right? Those are their parents, you know what I'm talking about. And it's so funny that people think that that river of which you're bridging, right, needs to be fought for. It doesn't need to be fought for. It was actually always there, right? It's whether or not you can make good bridges over it and be of service, right? And so it's just so funny to not just in my niece and my son, but it's like this level of the deeper dimension that I can never, that's part of self-realization that I can never know, but I have to trust it. It's like when I go inward, I think I can hear the rush of the river, right? I don't know. Is there really a river rushing? I don't know. I do know there's dimension here. And I do know that when I'm more, I'm stronger. Right? All right. Hands together, if you can. Otherwise, lift the center of your chest. Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you.